This is the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid, and today Marla Mutis. Hi, Marla. Every Saturday noon to 1 or noon to 2, sometimes WRMN 1410 AM, the Fox River Valley Media Network. We're streaming on WRMN1410.com. The studio number here is 847-931-1410, and the text number, very important today. 505-926-1410. I was checking out the text here, and they haven't had a text since Monday. So if someone texts me in today, that'd be great, because I'd say, hey, I'm one of the guys that get texts. All right? Yeah, or you could hit us up on the YouTube Live. YouTube Live chat on WRMN 1410's YouTube Live channel. And, oh, wait, I think we got more. No, that's all the way back to August 6th. Yeah. So, Marla, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, Paul and I talked about it this week. We're going to discuss business and just how to form a business, because I think a lot of your viewers may be interested in that.
Oh, yeah, that's great, because that's one of the strengths of the United States. One of our strengths is that our free market economy and the strength of even the smallest guy starting a business and making it big without being stomped out by the big guys. I know it takes a lot of work. A lot of people work real hard. One of the people that's been doing this is my daughter, Lucia, with her wrestling show. So start us off, Marla.
Well, we were going to discuss, it's not just forming a business that you have an idea or, a service, a product or whatever. It's actually making it happen that it's lucrative, it's profitable. But you also want to protect your own interests. You don't want to be subject to for example, lawsuit where you could be losing your home even. So Paul and I were going to discuss the different types of businesses. When in doubt, always consult some type of, would you say legal professional?
Yeah, or accountant or business professional.
Right. So Paul's going to go over the different types of businesses. First one being in your own business is sole proprietorship.
Okay.
So there's several different types of ways you can go into business. Like once you have an idea, a lot of people think that an idea for a product or service. A lot of people think that, hey, I'm all done. Well, you've just started. Okay, so there's different ways to form a business. The first one is in yourself, and that would be what we would call a sole proprietorship. And with that, you're the main person. You're the business. So this could be like, you could be a grass cutter or something like that, or you could be an author, or you could be, you could be an attorney, or you could be a doctor, okay? And then that would be what would be considered a sole proprietorship. Now, when you're a sole proprietor, you're responsible for everything. You get all the benefits, but you have all the liabilities. So, that's the first one. The second one is some form of a partnership. And there's several types of partnerships. There's a general partnership, which is a general partner.
2 or more people.
And 2 or more people. And usually what happens is in a general partnership, it's the old days, like when you're watching the black and white movies, one guy does the work or manages the business, and the other guy is the money guy. But they're general partners. They split everything equally. So that means they split all profits equally, but they also
incur losses if that.
Right, and liabilities equally. So that even if you're, even if you say, well, I just gave Fred the money, you owe as much as Fred does, and if Fred can't pay it, you owe Fred's share. That's called joint and several liability. Okay, so that's the first type of partnership. Okay, and as Marla said, has to be two or more people. The next type of partnership is a limited partnership. That means you have some general partners and some limited partners. And the reason why it's called a limited partnership is because the limited partners are the ones that put up the backing usually, or in like Lucia's case, they might be the promoters too. And then what happens is their exposure is limited to their investment or the capital they put in. Okay.
So one may only put in like $5,000, another one may put in $50,000. So they have different voting rights, maybe, Paul?
That's correct.
Is that anything like holding stock in the company? I mean,
they have an interest. We're going to get into that in a little bit with the next form of business. But with limited partners, a lot of people like to be in that because they're partners and they're an owner. But, like I said, there's the general partners. They usually make the decisions and they do the day-to-day work. Then the limited partners provide the resources or the connections. And then the next form of business are what we call the business corporation. And this is kind of what you're going to. So a business corporation has stockholders, okay? And they have two types of stock generally. They have common stock, and then they have preferred stock. And usually preferred stock, they get better benefits and return on their stock than the common stockholders.
They have more voting rights, don't they?
They usually do. Yeah. And so but now you have to understand something. Corporations are regulated by the state. Now, in Illinois, we have something called the Business Corporations Act. And we have two types of corporations. We have regular corporations and we have non-for-profit corporations. And in non-for-profit corporations, charities, but they could also be, veterans groups like yours. They don't have stock, but they have members and officers and directors, okay?
Yes.
So you have your business corporations. Now, the most common type, and I'm not talking about non-for-profits now. We can talk about that if you want. But business corporations are what we call C Corps. And actually, when they send you the certificate, it starts out with a C, or it used to. And C Corps are regular businesses, okay? And they have officers and directors, and then they have the shareholders, okay? And they have to be capitalized. And every year you have to renew your corporate charter, and you have
there may be a small fee you incur too to this,
and a larger fee under a franchise tax by how much money you have and how much property you have too. So those are what's called C corporations. Then there's two more corporations under that, but they're unique. One of them is a subchapter S. Okay, so say Marla and I formed a corporation, and we decide after we're incorporated, we want to treat it as more like a partnership. Okay, then we would form it as a subchapter S. Now, what that means is we have to get a form from the IRS, and it's a long form, and we have to submit it, and we have to elect subchapter S treatment. So what that means is the corporation files subchapter S tax returns, but any profits or loss gets sent on to Marla and I individually in the form of a K1, which is kind of like what you do with partnerships too. I mean, yeah, with a partnership.
Investment account?
Well, no, but it's just a way of, so say we have a small corporation, it makes $50,000. We would file an S return, but we would pay the tax individually on our own taxes. And we would, so we would, it would be recorded through as a business income, and we would list it on our return, but it would have a K1 from the subchapter S. That used to be the most common type of corporation for a long time after C's. And then more recently, they've had what they call limited liability corporations. And that's also kind of like a limited partnership, but for corporate purposes. And a lot of people like to say, you'll see Don Jones, LLC, or something like that. So that means he's a limited liability corporation.
How does his liability limited?
It would be limited to his investments.
What he put in.
So they couldn't go after his house. They couldn't go after anything else he had.
That's kind of the whole purpose of a corporation in and of itself. That's why you would want a corporation in some cases rather than a partnership. And I don't want to get into legal specifics because each is unique, and sometimes things can't be put in a corporation or partnership like that. But generally, unless you're treating the corporation as yourself, and like you're buying, like the old time stuff about all the storefront preachers. I'm in one of my 5 Rolls Royces, and they're all jade color. Unless you're treating it like you, under the cover of not wanting to pay tax on it, you generally want a corporation there because the liability stops with the corporation unless for some reason they could pierce the corporate veil, like it's a sham corporation. Yeah. That's why when you form these things, you need to actually have meetings, and you actually have to have
minutes. Yes.
Yeah, and you have to have voting, and you have to have things like that.
Bylaws. You need bylaws.
Bylaws, and you need a corporate board, and you need things like that, and you have to have elections. It has to show, can't be a hobby, okay? Because if it's a hobby, then you're bordering on them piercing the corporate veil. And like Marla mentioned, condo associations and things like that are what we call the non-for-profits. They're in the areas of 501c3, C4, C5, C6s, C10. Labor unions
C19s.
Right. Labor unions are in that, and they're corporations, but they don't have shareholders or stockholders. They have members, and they have officers and directors.
Let me take a pause here. Real quick. I love reading this one. The information on this show is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice on any subject matter. The views put forward on the show are the opinions of the host, Michael Tooman, Paul Burvid, Marla Mutis, their guests, callers, and not necessarily those of WRMN 1410 AM. Okay, we're good.
All right. Now, after the limited liability corporations, you have a whole other set of corporations, which are called professional services corporation. So like when you go to Dr. Jawbreaker, a dentist, you'll see, Dr. Joseph Jawbreaker, PC. So that means he's a professional corporation. So that means he is a doctor who's incorporated. Or you might find, Dr. Vinny Boombatz, PC. So he's your doctor, but he's a professional services corporation. So he does that maybe because he's got some property that, he owns, or he's got the machines that he owns separate from him. And, so they have it as professional services corporation. Now, you see this primarily in the areas of personal services, like doctors or dentists or, accountants. or some attorneys and things like that. But you mostly see that in that area, and that has its own benefits and pitfalls to it. Okay, so those are all that's the main form of business. Now, again, I'm not really giving legal advice here, but generally you want a barrier, which is why corporations tend to get formed more than, partnerships or sole proprietorships. And you want that. So that's what corporations provide you with a protection from liability. Now that opens up another area too. For a long time, you found out that every type of corporation you were dealing with was incorporated in Delaware. Okay. And that's because they had like the lowest corporate fees of anywhere. So a lot of corporations were incorporated in Delaware. Okay. But then they were here. Now they can do that. But if you're doing something like that, you have to have a local registered agent for service of process. Okay. And the registered agent for service of process has to be there. So in case you get sued, there has to be someone who's going to communicate that to the corporation. Okay. Now, I can tell you from a vast amount of experience, and Marla's been involved in charitable organizations and things like that. A lot of people have a good idea, okay, a real good idea, and then they form it, and then nothing happens with it.
No, the other thing I want to say is just because you have a business doesn't mean that it can expand as is. So you might have, for example, a small, hot dog or hamburger place, and it works for, it might be your neighborhood, it might be your price point, it might be, just the market over in that area. But if you were to expand it, you may have to modify it, and it may not be profitable anymore, and it may not work, or it might work. So not every small business can go into, a nationwide whatever, right?
Right.
I like to go sometimes to these smaller markets, and I'm not going to name the name of the yogurt, but I've discovered a small yogurt brand. It's based in New York when I looked on the internet. And I thought to myself, this is really pretty good. They could market to a larger chain like these, I don't want to say Whole Foods, but similar to Whole Foods or Whole Foods, something like that. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe the person running it doesn't have the equipment to meet those demands, for example, or the overhead or the manpower or whatever. So, I mean, not every business, not every business can expand well. And then when you're doing this, there's costs that you incur. So the larger you are, the more people involved, the more with the supply chain, right, Paul?
Right.
Yeah. So you have to invest. Sometimes you have to invest money to make more money. So you're taking a risk, and a lot of people are risk adverse. I mean, you open up. All right. So there was a hot dog stand on the northwest side. Over by where I worked, Area 3. It was called Hot Dogs. And the place had sometimes the lines were 2 blocks long. Really, they were long lines to get into the place. And he had about 7 people working for him. And he worked the register. That's about all he did was work the register. And he would chit-chat with you to slow down the line so that his workers, his fry cooks and everything could keep up with hot dogs. And they're making hot dogs, and passing out hot dogs. He had a real good word of mouth, a real good reputation. And he himself was a very personable, people wanted to come in there. He never had any problems. But when he took a day off or he went on vacation, he literally shut it down. He shut down the hot dog stand. If he wasn't there, no one was working. Right? And that's how risk adverse this guy was, that he did not want one of his employees to cause a scene, to cause him problems. And then when he finally shut down because he was making, the guy, it was a cash machine. He was just taking in cash, and he finally shut down. When they shut down, the lines got even longer because he said, 2 weeks I'm going to be closed. People wanted to stop there, and they actually had National Geographic come out they did a documentary on this hot dog stand in Chicago. And there's a place, he could have franchised out his name, Hot Dog. He could have walked away from it, but he didn't because he had like a personal pride in the place and he didn't want it to go down. So he didn't, I don't think he franchised out, where some people, like, remember Krispy Kremes, when they expanded, they were already a corporation down south. They were already pretty well known down south, but then they exploded into the Midwest, and that ended up backfiring on them.
I love Krispy Kreme if I can find it.
Yeah, but that's because you're not getting it every day and everything. But I think they overexpanded, and their market share didn't reflect it, and it was like a stretch. They stretched the rubber band, and it came snapping back. So they're still big down south.
Do you remember Amy Joy Donuts, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I think I've never been there, but there's a place, some donut place. I think it's in the 90s or 80s on Commercial, and I had some at my old job, and they're just really fabulous. And I think that what I was telling Paul about it too, what made it unique for me is it had that taste when I was a little girl. It was the real ingredients, and when you have real ingredients, that costs a lot of money.
Yeah. So
and to commercialize it, it's
pushing and everything. So you could do one of two things, right, in a business. You could start out small and hope to build big, or you could do what the guy with Wendy's did, right, Dave. And he went out and he said he collected $50,000 from 20 people. He had 20 investors, got $50,000 off of each of them. He had $1 million. Opened up his first Wendy's, and then it went big, and he had a plan, and he expanded out nationwide. And so he had the original 20 investors. So he had a big idea, but he didn't put any of his own money in it. He was the idea guy, and he was able to get the money. All right, so we're heading for our first break, and when we come back, we'll talk more about the starting your business and corporations and such not. I'll have more questions. Public Radio Show with your co-hosts today, Marla Mutis, Paul Burvitt, and Mike Tuman. And we're talking about businesses. We discussed the types of businesses and how people, how a lot of people are interested in starting businesses. I think there's two types of people, Well, you keep dividing everything, but it's easy to just cut things in half and then cut those halves in half and then cut those halves in half. Well, one of the things is people that like working for someone, having the stability of a paycheck paid by someone else, right? Being told what to do every day, earning the money, and then going home and having your own free time and not worrying about anything because you're just a cog in the machine. You did your part, and you'll go back and be a cog tomorrow. But you kind of enjoy your work, or you're happy for the work. And then there's other people that they don't like that. They want to have more control. They want to be in charge. They want to not work for someone, not answer to anyone. And, you have both extremes on that. And so most people, they might want to open up a side business like an Etsy or, one of our loyal listeners, that would be Gary Weber. And he has his Etsy store, www.boxnmor.etsy.com. boxandmore.etsy.com. And, it's kind of like you said, a hobby, but he's selling this stuff. So he's selling it in Etsy, making a little bit of a profit. For some guy like that, all right, where all you got your Etsy store there and you're making, fine furniture, fine handouts, plaques and everything. I can't, what sort of corporation would you, because it's just him. Can he incorporate that?
Sure. He could incorporate it, and he could have it. I was incorporated individually, so because of the services I was providing. So sure, you could always incorporate yourself individually, and but then understand something. You have to besides your tax return, you have to do the corporate tax return, which are due in March. Ahead of yours. And then, you might,
business might have to get inspected.
Yeah, some businesses have to be inspected.
Yeah.
And then you would have the corporate tax return, and then you would have to maybe pay taxes twice, because the corporation's going to pay tax, and then they're going to write you a check, and then you're going to have to pay tax on what they wrote you. So, you might want to do it, like as a subchapter S, pass through to yourself, and things like that. But again, those are all matters that are unique to the individual, and there's no one size that fits all. But of course, it's important too. And I don't want to get into the weeds or anything like that. But say, we talked about this. Say you get reclaimed furniture, okay, and you make these beautiful boxes, and there's nothing wrong with that, okay. But say that you sell them, right? And then 3 months later, turns out there were termites in the wood, and the eggs came out, and then it got into somebody's house, and then it caused damage. Well, they're going to want to come back after you, claiming that you didn't take steps, because we've got termite infestations from packaging that came from China and things like that. So that, that's probably never going to happen. It's never going to happen, but it might.
But it might. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Correct.
But
so
what if they are?
That means in a case like that, you might want to be incorporated.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, Marla's a big proponent of umbrella policies for liability. So you might want to,
even for your house.
Yeah, even for your house and things.
Like $2 million.
Yeah, and you at the very least, if you're a sole proprietor, you would want to have a fairly substantial umbrella policy to protect yourself, just in case something like that happened.
All right. So now, like myself, all right, I wrote a bunch of novels. 3 of them are here: Date Night in a Cemetery, The Public Guardians, and The Good Shepherds. Anyways, I published these.
Oh, excellent, by the way.
They are. I'm read them over and over. I don't need to go to the library. I just write myself a book and then I read it 10 or 20 times.
The Good Shepherd is actually really good to read at Christmas time, too.
I know. It's a Christmas combat story.
It is.
And, I go around that. But, okay, so I write these novels, but I self-published on Amazon, all right? So now I don't do I do very little sales on my own, right? Mostly I just give the books away. But if I was, Amazon is selling them for me, and then they send me a check for the royalties. All right, so because they take a percentage of my royalties, I haven't, I'm sorry that I haven't read the whole agreements in detail. I should go and read it in detail and know this stuff. But if I wrote something liable, like, not liable, what do you call it? If I libel the person in one of my books, like flat out libel them, said I was with them at this time and they did this and it was heinous and it was terrible and it causes them financial distress where they lose money or something. It's proven that I lied. Does Amazon share in any of that liability because they took part of the royalties?
Normally they would, but the thing you got to watch out for with Amazon is that they have an in your agreement that you didn't maybe look at the fine details. You may have to subrogate them. So like you could be liable, but then they could be liable for whatever you did, and then you have to pay them back. And just remember, Amazon's going to have the $1,000 an hour type lawyers at the very least doing it. So if they incur $1 million, they're going to be then coming back to you for to pay them back because there's an agreement that you have to defend them or something in there. So you have to look for those things.
They better look out because just as I self-published and self-proofread and self-formatted and self-everything on this and the cover self-everything, I definitely, if I was sued, would go pro se. So they could say, and I would drag it out so that they're spending gazillions of dollars on lawyers and I'm not spending anything because I'm not paying myself. I know. Like I says, I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on television, and all my clients seem to go to prison. I don't know why.
That's right.
One reason that I like the umbrella policy, and they're not real expensive. There might be a couple $100 a year
for millions in coverage.
For
usually,
like $2 million covered. Yeah. We don't always know who we're bringing into our homes. And they may not be insured, and they tell us they are. And, I also wanted to mention, I've actually purchased off that ES or ETF. Yeah. What I liked about it is I was able to get a few, I didn't buy a lot there, but I did buy a few things. And I actually ordered from abroad, too. But one thing Paul mentioned is that not all items coming in are of standard, right? You have to watch where you're buying and know that the product and it conforms with our, for example, electric systems. Or
I knew an individual one time that purchased like a hanging lamp, okay, and it was through one of these sites, and I said to the person before they bought it, I said, where's that lamp coming from? And they said that the lamp was coming from Europe. And I said, well, where in Europe? It was coming from Italy. Okay. And I said, well, you better call up. And it was a substantial amount of money for this lamp. But granted, when this person put it in their house, I would guarantee that probably no one else in the United States has this lamp. Okay.
Well, you can get unique things
right.
all over.
But it was hand formed glass with tinting, beautiful lamp. Okay, but it when it arrived, and I'm not exaggerating too much, it kind of came on its own seat in an airplane, and then when it landed, it had its own Uber driver drop it off to the person's house. Okay, and it was beautiful lamp. But, it had nothing to do with American standards. And, you're going to have a problem because, they embed those wires in like a kind of a concrete thing at the base. And you can't drill that out. And you find a heck of a time to find an electrician who's going to be able to get that to American standards and stuff like that.
You can say that for any kind of products.
Right. So I always tell people.
He's a UL listed guy.
Yeah, I always tell people, make sure, and if it doesn't conform to it, send it back because you don't want anything that's going to cause you trouble later on.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So if you're in a business, right, and one of the great things now, even this modern day world with modern shipping standards and everything else, tariffs are kind of a problem, a little bit of a problem, but Etsy, eBay, there's other things out there. I can't mention them all. There are more than just Etsy and eBay. You can set up your own website and have your own thing, and then you go to the UPS store, you go get an account with FedEx and everything where they do most of the shipping for you. So that saves you a big problem. And you're producing a product on your own and you're sending it out there. There's ways to do that without a very large capital investment. All right. Like I said, my capital investment in my authoring, right? So people buy Word, right? They buy MS Word, Microsoft Word, and the whole Office thing, and then they go and they buy Grammarly. They buy a Grammarly program to do grammar thing for them, and then they buy the computer to go down there, and then they got to pay the licenses on this and that, right? Then they write up their thing, and then they write up their novel or their book or their screenplay, and then they send it to a proofreader, and proofreader charges money on that too, and then they send it, someone format this, and then they send it out to a publisher, and unless you're a real famous guy where they're giving you front money because they know you're like a Stephen King-ish guy or something, and they know you're going to make a profit on these books, right? So they give you front money for it, and you just puke it out onto paper, and they fix everything up for you because now you're a known thing. You got to go find a publishing company, and they're going to say, well, we're going to need this much money up front to publish this many books for you. And then you got to find someone to market it. And then you got to pay for marketing and everything. And this is a large capital output, right? But if you're willing to do it yourself and you're a little savvy and you're going to work at it, it's not, you can publish these books. You can market them for nothing. Because I got, what did I get? I get, well, it cost me a little money because what I did, right, like my business, and it's not a business, I didn't make it as a business. I wrote for therapy, and I says, hey, I'm just going to publish it because I heard about self-publishing. So I use Linux as my operating system. I use LibreOffice, which is the open source office out there. And I just typed this stuff up. I've learned to format it. I formatted it. I did the the cover art myself, and then I sent it to Amazon, and Kindle was real good at it. And they didn't say, oh, you owe us this much money up front. No, it was just that. They said, well, how much do you want in royalties? And I could be asking $25 a book or something. I think I get about 30 cents a book on these royalties. And you don't even have to have it printed out. But the cool thing was, that I printed out the first copy and had it sent to me, and I thought the novel was pretty good, but it's, how much would it cost me to print out 200 pages?
Right.
When I go to Amazon, they publish it and I says, hey, send me a copy of that book. Boop. I pay for it myself and it comes back. I get the royalties back and I'm like, oh, look at this. And I could do all the editing on there. So there's, like I said, you don't need a brick and mortar store to sell a lot of this, although this is one thing I haven't seen in a while, right? Is if you're not great with organization, but you're good with, you got a lot of stuff, or you do what's called thrift store shopping, right? Thrift store shopping. You go out there and you collect all this stuff, but you're too busy going to the thrift store to ship these things out and to publish them. They used to have an eBay store. You go into this place, and those people would put it up on eBay for you. However, if you're not fronting them the money, they're going to take it. You're selling it on, what do you call, there's a word for it, begins with a C. You're not commission. On commission? No.
Yes.
So you're saying, hey,
consignment. You're thinking of consignment.
So you don't get any money till they sell it, and they're going to take a part of that money too, right?
Right.
So that was like a store that someone set up because they had a skill set, and they're having people supply them with product. It's like I thought it was the greatest idea, right? I thought it was the greatest idea. You sit there, people bring product to you, you take pictures of it, and you post it on the internet, and then people buy that stuff. You put it in the shipping, and you have UPS come and get it because you got a thing with them, right? And all these people are basically your employees that you pay. All you do is pay them their consignment fee, right? You're giving them money. You're not paying a payroll, all right? Because I thought that was the best because you're just kind of middleman marketer with that, but you are providing a service, right? And now that gets into the liability of the termite liability. We'll use it as the termite analogy, right?
Right.
So someone brings something in, it's got termites in it, even though they're selling it on consignment because I am now involved with that in some way. They come after me.
That's why you have in these things what they call a subrogation agreement, so that, if something goes wrong, they have to provide you. And then, that could get to be real expensive, though. That's why you have to watch out. I have relatives that are, trying to get involved in business. Primarily now they're involved in real estate, but they always said, they want to get involved in business. And I said to them, the easiest thing to do is to be involved in a business that doesn't cost anything and makes you maximum amount of profits.
Yep.
And for like the last 20 or so years, that's what I've prided myself in. Because I've done the firearms training, I've done the security training, I've done the law enforcement training. If I'm just sitting down, preparing the materials, and then, Xeroxing them or whatever I'm doing with them, and then I'm getting paid to present it, that's a win-win situation. That means that I have virtually no overhead.
Yeah,
and then everything that I bring in is profit. And I said, if you could find a business like that, you'll come up with something, invent something that, and then now with all these 3D printers and things like that, you could invent parts, or you could do this. Before I did that, I would go get a patent on it or something like that. But if you could provide something that nobody else has done or had, and then you could do that with minimal overhead, then you're the guy or the woman, because that's what you want. You want to have least amount of exposure, least amount of expenses, and then you want to be able to have the least amount of shipping. Or, like you're saying, you could go to Amazon, or if you could do it, have people pay you for a download, for some program or something like that. That's what you want, because that'll get you the most amount of profits for the least amount of expenditure.
All right, so we got a caller.
Hello.
Yeah, it's Cleveland Dennis.
Hey, Cleveland Dennis.
Started out, least amount of exposure with most amount of profit. I used to do buyouts at the department store in downtown Cleveland, May Company, and I pay $3,000, rent a truck. We win the bid. We set up at the flea market, make about $1,000 a Sunday. That went on for a while.
Yeah,
During the 10 or 15 years that I'm doing the import-export business, air freight out of Cleveland, then I moved up. I moved to Chicago, worked for a large corp. Finally got my own business, had my own S-Corp since 1991 or so. Had a business, sold it. Now work as an agent, sales agent technically, for a company that we're kind of number one on the internet. And my expense has been reduced to me having a computer. I operate from my basement. Life is good, but business is tough until China and the U.S. Decide what they're going to do. But I have a great month after great month recently. I love your guys' show. I'm relating, man. I love everything you're saying. I hope you have 1 million listeners to listen to this, because people probably don't even understand how valuable you are.
We're talking truth to power. Truth to power.
Dennis,
Okay,
you're like the classic example of a real businessman. And you know, if people understood this, you know, they're like pie in the sky, you know, I'm going to be driving my Cadillacs and stuff like that. But if you know what you're doing, somebody like you, that's the most important thing out there. And the more people you are that are like you, Dennis, or like Marla or Mike or me, that's what makes our country strong. That because we're not afraid to pay our share of taxes. We're not afraid to do things.
Yeah.
I'm just afraid of what happens if I don't pay my taxes.
That's true.
Well, it is good. It's not good. I've experienced it.
That being said,
it's so true. Yeah.
But that being said, a bankrupt business does not pay its taxes.
That's true. That is true. Sometimes you want to just keep them going, you know. That's why you only break their thumbs, because they could still get a job working with the other 8 fingers.
That's right.
To pay up.
Yeah.
You know.
You guys know, both of you have a lot of, like, what I call, again, the soulful logic truth, man, about stuff. How Paul knows off the top of his head, I guess, about all the different corporations. I follow that. I understand that. 501c3 charities, look out, people. You know, there's a lot of, questionable operations under those, but that's another story for another time. I just enjoy the show and decided to call in because you hit the hot button and contribute from what my experience is, and I appreciate Paul's comment about it, but, you know, it's also like the American...
All right, we got to go, Dennis. We're hitting a hard break.
Are you on?
We're hitting a hard break.
For another hour?
Yes, we're on for another hour. Another hour.
I'll come in. I'll blab back. Bye.
Hey, blab back on the text, 505-926-1410. Marla Mutis, Paul Burvitt, and Mike Tooman today talking about small businesses. Text us at the AM 1410 text line, 505-926-1410. You call us at 847-931-1410, or you could text us at 505-926-1410. Or you could hit us up in the comments on the YouTube Live WRMN 1410 channel. Marla, if you were going to open up a business tomorrow, how would you go about doing it? A business, I know you've been thinking about it, something that you would want to open up. I'm not saying that you're going to, but I dream of if I wanted to build my perfect house or perfect car or something. I may never do it, but I always have it running through my brain. It's kind of like they call a pipe dream, you know? So if you were going to open up a business, what would it be and how would you do it?
Well, I would look at, would I be providing a service or would I be offering a product, or would I be in my own business? Why I would survey the market. I would look at how much money I could put into it, or would I want to seek out investors? At my stage of the game, I'm not looking to open a business, Mike, actually. But I think for the younger people, there's a lot of opportunities out there. So I would just, figure out why I thought my idea was unique and what market I would want to look at. I would always consult a business professional. But are you asking me what kind of business is there out there now?
No, did you ever have a dream of opening one, and any time in your life?
One thing I always liked since I was real young was old-fashioned ice cream store. But I don't know if the market would hold it now. But I did at one time, yes. Because I always like fountain drinks and fountain ice. Kind of like when I was a kid, I used to go to Dove. I know they closed the shops.
Oh, yeah.
Rainbow Cone. I don't want to give plugs to businesses, and there's many out there, but Cupid Candy closed.
Yeah, oh, that was a
Gertie.
good place. Yeah.
Maybe that's patronized from the south side. But I mean, I think that something that wouldn't take too long to open up and something that wouldn't be that bad if I had to close it. But I did, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of right. The way I see it now is something like that. You're right. You gotta pick your market. One, disposable income, because soda, ice cream, fancy stuff like that. If you don't have an area with disposable income, people aren't going to come in and buy it. Like Paul said, they'll go get the cheap ice cream out of the Aldis, and they'll make do with that. What you're talking about is more of kind of like an experience. Just like and that's more of a service than even a product, because I think a lot of these high-end things are the service. Like my buddy he's pretty well off, and he takes his wife to Las Vegas, right? And my buddy didn't get well off by spending a lot of money. Let me tell you that, right? But he takes her there, and she goes to. You have one of the places your soda fountain would probably work very well is in Vegas, because people are there. They're there for vacation, except for the people working there, right? And they have disposable income that they're going to play, right? So he brings his wife there, and they have the little malls and these hotels and everything with the little shops, the boutique shops, right? And he says he takes her in there, and he lets her buy stuff, and she buys the stuff, and he's telling me, he says, like, man, I get that cheaper, the exact same thing cheaper on Amazon, or we go, down to a big box store and we can find it there or whatever. And I says, Larry, you don't understand. This is an experience, all right? She gets the service. She gets treated like a very important person, all right? Very important person. And then she gets to leave that shop with the fancy bag, and have everyone saying, hey, look at that. And those fancy bags, are more of an advertisement for the shop too, but you feel kind of good about yourself on that. And there's exactly where you got to do your market research. But most businesses, they say what? Only 1 in 5 businesses makes a profit in 3 years, new businesses, like only 1 in 5. So some of these guys, they run a deficit until they get a market share, until they get regular customers, and still something hits. They got to have staying power. In order to do that, some of them invest their life savings. Some of them take out loans, because they're not putting out stock, because who's going to buy stock in a mom and pop shop right there, right? But they're taking out loans for that. And where am I getting with that? So if you don't have the staying power, right, you never know when you're going to hit. You never know when your business is going to be successful. What was it? Amazon didn't make a profit for like the first 10 years. All right, he was running deficits for 10 years.
They were in it for the long game.
Did he start out with books?
Yeah, he started out doing
books out of his garage.
Yeah.
Books out of his garage, and you're competing with Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, everything else. But he had a business plan and everything. But he took a loss for over 10 years, and then all of a sudden he hit big. Right? It just expanded, like he hit the lottery or something. But that was, I'm not going to deny it, that's a lot of hard work. But who kept him afloat for 10 years? Because no one's going to keep me afloat for 10 years. The banks are going to come in. They're going to throw me out of my house. They're going to throw me out of my business. They're going to repossess my car, and then the not so nice banks are going to come and break my kneecaps and harvest my kidneys. But there's where I get with the connections, right? So if you got good connections to help keep you afloat for 10 years, you can make a lot of money. Other people started with a lot of money. All right, so we got Dennis on the line again. He's one of our loyal fans and listeners. Or is it Dennis?
Well,
Hi, Dennis.
That is, and yeah, hi. I really enjoy this show today, and I just have a few comments here, just based on the last couple of minutes of discussion. You know, Amazon, this is what I heard, because I somehow or other, it's not that I'm searching to go deep, but I hear it. But he did have investors, personal or otherwise, from the Silicon Valley, and it wasn't like he was not making any money. They set it up and generated it, and I relate to what he's doing, because what he's doing is more a transportation and distribution company than a sales company. He just has the sales based on the internet, but the setup with the transportation is what made it work. Think about it. He's competing against UPS, FedEx, DHL, and what we call the integrators. They integrate all the transportation modes: ocean, air, truck, delivery. Okay.
But not only that, Dennis. They don't just use Amazon delivery trucks. Sometimes, because what you're saying is there's like independent contractors, and Amazon has a distribution site. Not everything is there. So I might have a garage filled with stuff, but I have an Amazon store. And then I get the order from Amazon, and then I put it with the USPS, or I put it with UPS, and it goes out.
Right.
Yeah.
I know how this works just because my company allows my son a budget of about $750 to $1,000 a month to buy what he needs for what he does. And we witness the service.
All right.
He buys it when he gets here and all that. But here's what I want to say. You know, it's about the connections, and that's what the Amazon chieftain had. He had the connections, and he made that work. He envisioned what he thought he could do, and it wasn't just all about books either. Anyhow, I'll move on to, you know, and that's a service biz that he has. He's not really selling. That's a byproduct, selling the product.
He's got his computer database with all these products that you can search, and it's all linked up. You know, and he's got the massive servers to hook this all up and to get everything shipped. It's been built up and everything. I'm sure.
Right.
And the difference between him and like the U.S. government when it comes to databases and products and logistics and everything is that it's in his best interest to make everything as efficient as possible, because that saves him money. All right.
And the fact that
makes it harder to compete with them. All right.
Right. The fact that you know all this, you and I have to have about a 3-hour sit down, go into detail. But I just want to say this. You know, he's got the connections, and it's a service biz. But I'll tell you a little story. You were talking earlier. Somebody mentioned what the heck? What was the word? I made a note on this one. I used to be. She had the fanny bag you guys are talking about. Like you go in there somewhere and then you get it and then you walk out with that bag.
The fancy bag, yeah.
Fancy bag, yeah. My handwriting, it's a little tough here. But we bought a taco cart because I thought, hey, we could make money on the weekend instead of being at the flea market selling thousands of dollars worth of women's shoes, which they went crazy for, that we bought from the downtown department store. But I saw how hard a work that was just to set up for a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yep.
I give a lot of credit to the people that want to start businesses in food and restaurants.
Okay, Dennis, I'm going to give Marla and Paul the final words here. Okay? Thank you for calling in, Dennis.
Thank you for listening to me, but no, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the show. It's stimulating because you guys are spot on. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I've been thinking about some companies that were even in the Chicagoland area when I was a kid growing up. I mentioned I used to go to Dove Candy Shop on 65th and Pulaski, in Chicago, 5800 South Pulaski. I don't even know. But I believe that a larger candy company purchased that. I'm thinking of some of the, Rainbow Cone was a smaller thing, a 95th and Western and Evergreen Park, I think.
Well, now they're franchising. They're in Florida now and things like that.
Companies like smaller pizza companies that have expanded. And then there's things like, I'm talking about food a lot today, but, smaller companies can get on this with Goldbelly, right? Although it's a little more expensive. We know of a nice little pizza place out in, I believe it's Midlothian or Crestwood or something. And they ship on Goldbelly and they have a good, so I mean, you could have a small business and then get a market like you said that your friend has.
You could be a local business, but yet ship internationally, and
Yes.
it just depends on the product. I think though, the most important thing is if you have an idea, and you have a concept or whatever. I think it's important though not only to incorporate, but to do things like Marla's involved in education. I think you should try, at least, if not you, have your family member or senior staff, if it's a small business, to go and get some more education, whether it's a degree or an advanced degree. But I think there's things you could rely on, like you join your Chamber of Commerce. They help people, and they're able to help you market things. The Small Business Administration, like you were talking about a loan, you're primarily going to get your loan probably from the Small Business Administration. But remember something, you're going to pay it back. So if your business fails, you may also lose your house. So, it comes with danger. But there's also that thing since 1964 that the government kind of promotes, and the small business is SCORE, and it's a group of retired executives that have programs, education, and it's kind of like funded through the SBA and local nonprofits, and you should get some kind of training and learn how to do marketing yourself, marketing in a way that you're not, spending an arm and a leg, or, like you said, put it on the bag or whatever, or, just, have people go around the neighborhood and, promote your product or word of mouth. And, Marla's big on doing stuff on Facebook or the internet and things like that. And just be a prudent businessman. Be careful, don't associate yourself with, like you said, the people that would want to, break your thumbs. Just make sure that you get out there, and Marla would call it network with your fellow businesses. You guys could work hand in hand, like the local men's store recommends a tailor or things like that, and get a stable, cadre of similar or like or compatible businesses where you can help each other, and you by helping one, you're really helping all, because then he's in business to do your alterations or whatever, because you can't really find too many. There used to be cleaners almost on every corner, especially where it's not like that anymore. And you want to get a business that's thriving, and you want to get a business that, like if you're whatever it is, if you have a service, but if you're not providing it, your business isn't doing anything. If you have a product and you're overpriced and you're not selling it, you're just sitting on a product. Your inventory's not doing it. Your inventory.
It's an investment that's losing value every day.
Right. Your investment's not alive. So like you want to get something that works, but you also, and like you said, you don't want to get to the point where you can't trust your manager, where you can't work with your manager, and then if you're sick or you take off, everything shuts down. You don't ever want to get to that point, but you don't want to get to the point either where your business is killing you or making you sick or you hate it. Because if you go to work and you like your job, you've never worked a day in your life. If you go to work and you hate your job, you've been in hell for 30 years. So you don't ever want to get
wage slave.
That's correct. Or you're not only a wage slave, you're a regulatory slave, because we really even didn't talk about, doing your books or paying your unemployment compensation or paying your workman's compensation. We never thought about all of those people that are in your pocket too, that prevent you from getting your wallet out. So, there's a lot of factors in opening up a business, because if you have employees, you got to have workers' comp. You got to have unemployment. Unemployment insurance is a tax, so you got to pay an extra tax. If you haven't been in business, they don't know how to score you on your insurance, so you're going to pay the top until you do have a.
Okay, so I think we're doing something that we really don't want to do on this show, is make people afraid. All right?
No.
You shouldn't be afraid. No. If you have an idea, you shouldn't be afraid. But what Marla has said in the past, when she's been on this show, when we're talking about people being scammed and everything, do your research. Check on this stuff. Sometimes people will go to start up a business and they'll get scammed. They'll get scammed. Oh, I'll help you with this. I'll help you with that. Give me the money. I'm a professional here and everything. And they take their money and they disappear because they've just been scammed. They've had a good idea, and the person that they're talking to tells them only what they want to hear. So they get all hyped up. They trust this person with their money, and that person runs away with the money, and now they're broke and their ideas failed, and they're like, oh, maybe it was a great idea. Maybe this guy even took their idea and went somewhere else and started up with their idea. One, opportunities abound out there, because this is the United States of America, right? You're not locked into one place. You could always move around. There's shipping available and everything. Opportunities abound. It's hard work. Nothing's going to be easy. It's always going to be hard work. And if it's easy for you, that means you have a knack for it, and it's something you like. I work on something that I like doing, and it's not hard work for me because I like it. I enjoy it, right? What you're saying, Paul. All right, so some people might say it was real easy for them because they liked what they were doing. You might not like that, and you say, that one's been really difficult. So and like you're saying, there are funding sources out there, but they come at a cost. Everything comes, So instead of making people afraid, there are regulations and everything, but they're all published. There's no secrets out there, right? But there's also no magic word to make you successful. Well, there's one magic word. It's 4 letters, but I'll mention it on the air. Work. Right, Paul?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Oh, we got a few minutes left.
I think one thing people could look at is trying to get in with someone who's established and have a partner.
A mentor.
I noticed. Yeah, I guess, but like example for products, try to get your product in a store, and build it up or something, established store. Before we go, we wanted to wish Diane happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to Diane.
Yeah, that's tomorrow.
And, I said tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah.
So wish her happy birthday from Paul and I.
Yeah. Well, she knows, Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Marla, you should call Diane, and you know what would really cheer her up and make her happy? Talk about candy. No, I'm not. Because Diane she's That's one of the things she does. She knows all about like the candy history of the United States. So if you start talking about Dove and all these candy places that you remember, oh, she'll love it. She'll absolutely enjoy that. Times, those are, and like I said, a lot